talk about some like sort of main features of the language. We're going to talk like in broad terms for a few more minutes, and then we're going to get to some more specifics, actually looking at code. JavaScript, it's a dynamic programming language. Anyone want to like talk to me about what that means? Dynamic programming language? That's okay. I'll give you guys a pass on this one. But you've used up your one pass now. It's a high-level language. So what does that mean? Abstract. You can treat it more like human spoken language than computer language. So high level, which means abstract language, that compiles, which means transforms into computer readable code at runtime. So when JavaScript runs, it immediately is compiled into computer code. It's not pre-compiled and then run. JavaScript has first-class functions, which is different from other languages like Ruby. It just means that functions are objects. They can be assigned to variables. So we can do this. Here I am in my console. Ooh, got some errors here. It means I can make a variable called welcome equal a function. That console logs. Hi. We get undefined right now, but we can say welcome, and it refers to this function, and we can even call it, and we console log hi. So that's a special feature. It doesn't look that special right now, but we can set a function equal to a variable. We'll talk a lot more about that later. And obviously the big main purpose of JavaScript, the reason it came about in the first place, is that it uses scripts to manipulate the DOM, the document object model, which is really cool. That's a really special thing about JavaScript, is that you can write scripts that change the things that are on a web page. Okay, so let's do some JavaScript stuff. Let's get into it. So let me open up my intro to JavaScript. Okay. I use Atom as my text editor.
So we don't need Xcode?
You'll probably want it. It takes a while to download. You could probably start it now and have it downloaded. Okay, so I've just made this file that we can kind of run one by one and just talk about some features of JavaScript, stuff you can do, features of the language, and if JavaScript is new to you, you'll also get a little bit more familiar with the syntax. Also, if JavaScript isn't new to you, you may also see some syntax that's unfamiliar. Okay, so I'm going to start by uncommenting this. You can look at it together. So defining and calling a function. This is what a function looks like in JavaScript. We have a function called cat that console logs cat, and I'm calling the function cat on line 5. When I put the parentheses there, that means invoke this function, run it. So JavaScript runs with Node, right? I'm giving Node the path to the file that I'm running my code in. So we should see this file run, and we'll see cat logged to console. Any questions about that? Okay, great. Let's get to some more exciting stuff. So can somebody just tell me what's happening here? What's happening on line 8?
You're creating a variable called dog and assigning a function that returns dog.
It returns a string dog, and then I'm console logging the return value of dog. Okay, still pretty simple. Let's see what happens. So we get dog. Okay, great. Has anybody used an arrow function before? Yeah. Guy in the plaid shirt, what's your name?
Mike.
Hi, Mike. What's happening here?
I think it's a really similar thing. So the parentheses represents a function, and the arrow points to the content of the function.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how I understand it, but I don't know how to
Yep. So we have these parentheses here. This is the same syntax for doing what we just did on lines 8 through 11. Mike is right. We are setting a variable equal to a function. This function is an arrow function. This is new JavaScript syntax. ES6 ECMAScript 2015 JavaScript allows us to write functions in this way. It's just a more concise way of writing a function. That's like the main benefit, aside from context. But we'll get into that later. And so within our function, we have this code block, console log. We just put that within brackets, and then we're invoking the function. So we'll run the file. We see squirrel. Great. Okay. And let's see what's going on here.
What's the arrow do?
What does the arrow do?
Yeah.
It's just part of the syntax. So actually, and you can see in this next one that I've given you on line 20, this is the same syntax but with an argument. So what you need to know about arrow functions is you pass the arguments in parentheses, then you give it this, what do you guys call these, like hash rockets? Does anybody have a good name for this thing?
Like hash rocket.
Hash rocket? Yeah. Somebody I knew came up with it was like clamshell hash rocket curly braces or something. This is just indicates, I don't know, it's just the syntax, it's just what it does. And then you put the code block in curly brackets. That's the best explanation I got. It just is. That's just how it is. So what do we expect to console log from this one? Yeah. Great. Okay. Let's talk about looping. Can somebody tell me what's happening in this example? Just kind of like describe to me the code. Yeah, what's your name?
Rick.
Rick?
Yeah. So squirrel name is all this, and you just pretty much returning a function to printer where the name is treated as an element of the list, and you just pretty much passing. You're just gonna print the sentence like four times for Mag and squirrel, pack and squirrel, Jeff and squirrel, pack and squirrel.
Great. Yeah, so on line 26, we have a variable. We're setting it equal to an array of strings. Then we have printer. Yeah, question?
Would it print 8 times because we're calling console that logs twice?
Good question. Yeah, let's see what happens when we run it, and we can talk about why that happens. Great question. What's your name? Natalie. So we've got squirrel names, which is a variable referring to our array of squirrel names. For each squirrel in that array, we're using this variable name, which refers to each name individually. So the first time this loop runs, name will equal Mac. The second time this loop runs, it will equal Pack, etc. Then we go into the code block. So for the first time this runs, it will say, let sentence equal the name, Mac, plus this is called concatenation when we're taking two strings and like sticking them together. So we're saying Mac is a squirrel. Yeah.
Why is the function like an extra parenthesis?
Why is the
Like the dot for each.
dot for each? Like why is this inside here?
Yeah.
Inside these parentheses? It's the syntax of for each. You could picture this looking slightly differently. Like we could define this function here, like where we take name and pass it the sentence. You could picture that being like a function defined elsewhere that we just like refer to within this for each. Probably if you were doing something more complex than just making a sentence, you may have more going on in that function, so you'd want to like define it elsewhere and then just refer to it in this for each loop. It's the syntax of for each. So whatever comes within the parentheses is what you're going to do on each iteration of this loop. A function saying for each iteration, take this action. That's what your function does. Does that answer your question? Okay. So then we're just console logging our sentence. I'm also returning the sentence just for fun. We'll see what happens with that. And then what am I actually console logging here?
The thing you return?
Yeah, I'm console logging whatever this is, right? So I'm not console logging like this return. I'm console logging whatever that equals after it runs. You see what I'm saying? So we've talked a lot. Let's see what actually happens when we run this. Make a guess in your head of what you think will print out, and then I'll run it. So we got 4 things printed out. Then we got undefined, which is what? Where did that undefined come from? What was that?
The return statement, because in the end, you just return your object.
Yeah.
The console.log printer is undefined because you return the whole thing.
Yeah, it's undefined for some reason, right?
Well, it's undefined because the function defined in the for each loop has nothing to do with the printer. But not this function. It's not assigned to it, so the printer doesn't actually return it.
Yeah. I tricked you guys. For each return's undefined. That's just what happens. Which seems like stupid. Like, why did I just make you guys guess? But let's try something else. Okay, so take a look at this one. Observe what's different about this one. Anyone want to say? Yeah. Yeah, we're using map. That's the only thing that's different, but obviously they must do different things because they both exist. So I'm gonna run this one, and based on this console log, tell me what you think the difference between for each and map is.
You can return that.
Yeah, you can return a map. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
So it's like a set of things. So you can, each one is in its own that set.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah, what do you?
I think it takes in an input of all the, so like it took an input of Mac, Back, Jack, Back, and the undefined,
Mm-hmm.
and then it returned a Boolean value of all of them, matching the, so like, it says that we have to map it to the sentence, and the sentence is actually the square root. So every time an input matches, so it took an input as Mac and it said Mac, if Mac is a square root is in the output, then return true, and then only you should return it in the final.
I think you might be thinking of filter, perhaps. There are some that do a true-false evaluation. Map does not. So I'm gonna do one more thing, and I want you guys to perhaps refine your guesses based on this change. So here I've commented out the return value of this map. That's the only change I've made. I'm still console logging sentence and then console logging printer. Yeah.
So does map build like a matching array, or like I guess, are they called arrays in JavaScript? Okay. So does map build like a matching array based on what's returned from the function?
Yeah. What's your name?
Lucy.
Lucy. Yeah, that was great, Lucy. So because we have this return line within our map, map is going to actually store each iteration, whatever the return is. So I could return something a name. I could return hi for like no reason. And map is going to keep that return value and store it in this variable printer. I don't know why I would do that, but returning the value for each iteration is actually that's like the valuable part of map. The ability to keep track of this array in its updated state. And just for clarity's sake, so now I'm console logging printer, the value of that variable, and I'm console logging squirrel names. So just so you can see, the original value is unchanged. Map gives me a new value with my iterations values. So just be aware of that. You're not changing the original array that you had. You're making a whole new array with your new return values. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So I've got a teeny little assignment for you guys. So I want you to create an index.js file, just like I have. I want you to write a JavaScript loop, not using for each, but I want you to use a for loop, but don't use for each. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, Google JavaScript for loop. The for loop should iterate over an array of name strings and console.log each name. So like the squirrel names, you can use that if you want to. And then just run the file with Node to confirm that the loop works the way you expected. Does everyone understand the instructions? So this should take, it's 10:46 now, take until 10:50, and we'll talk again.